Okay, well, I'm going to get started, and if people join in, that's great. I will do my best to monitor the chat, but since we are talking about elementary, feel free to channel your inner elementary student and shout out. I don't mind that at all, but like I said, I will try to monitor the chat. My name is Suzannah Evans. Welcome to my session. I'm an instructional coordinator in the St. Vrain Valley Schools in Longmont, Colorado, where I support principals and teachers in data informed instructional decision making, so to speak. And I do want to emphasize that this session speaks to AI use in elementary by educators. It is not really about how students are using it, as they are 5 through 10 in elementary, we know. So it is really about how we have embraced this as educators ourselves in the elementary classrooms, not necessarily how students are using it. I also want to apologize in advance. My allergies have exploded this morning, and so I apologize if my sniffling becomes distracting. One thing I wanted to mention too, just for fun, is that most of the images on the slides, not all of them, but most were generated by Google's new Duet AI system, which I have the luck to be piloting with them. And so that's been really fun as well. So just to speak to my district a little bit, one of my department head, Diane Lauer, actually presented yesterday at the conference. And one of the reasons I love our district so much is that we are a district that doesn't want to wait to see what everyone else is doing. We are always incredibly thoughtful about how we approach new technology, and we also want to drive our own train, so to speak. We look to create our use policies, explore cutting edge tech, and be innovative leaders. And so this presentation really speaks to how we just dove into this last summer as a district. So thank you for joining me. Oh, sorry, here we go. Okay, so here's how we approached AI last summer, July and August. We all know it was blowing up in terms of education. It was the Wild West, still is in a lot of respects. Our district is also heavily invested in approaching problems with the design thinking lens. Many teachers lean into this lens of thinking when we're approaching challenges, whether consciously or unconsciously. We often approach problem solving by using the design thinking process. If you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to explore it. It's not necessarily a linear sequential process, even though this image implies that. The stages can overlap, they circle back on each other. You don't have to engage in each one. When you're using it, you could just be focusing in empathy or just be ideating, but these are all the stages, and these are the essential questions or the essential things that are happening as you are in each stage. So in empathy, we're identifying the need, then we're defining the problems, we're brainstorming, creating and iterating, and then reiterating if needed during the test stage. As we entered into empathy and define, as we were engaging in this, these are certainly not the only needs and problems that we identified, but these were what were continuously bubbling up. So teachers needing more time overall, that's constant. That's the age-old problem, right? Teachers wanting to replicate themselves instructionally, also age-old problem. Wanting to create more effective and efficient feedback loops, and needing writing exemplars at different age levels. As far as defining, we had the problem, as all of us did, and still do probably at this last summer especially, but still now, AI policies and best practices not being solidified in the district, young students' data privacy and appropriate use concerns. As the district, we are hyper focused on this constantly. What companies are mining for student data all the time. And then specifically in writing, the feedback loop is probably the most time consuming loop, if any of you are elementary teachers. And then writing exemplars at different age levels is actually very difficult. As an adult, trying to write a writing exemplar as a 5-year-old is incredibly hard. And if you need to do several, not every class, as we know, students are not always at the same level. So writing an exemplar as maybe a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old all in the same classroom is incredibly time consuming and is very hard. So in our so these are what we defined as the most common needs and problems. As we arrived at the ideate stage, it's common practice to develop some how might we questions to help us focus. So our first question, how might we begin to incorporate AI as educators while student use policies are still being developed? I like to make the analogy for this question of building the plane in the air. But with any technology and particularly AI, we felt we could not wait for that plane to be built, and we'd be waiting forever. The technology in AI plane is constantly under refinement. So if we wait until it's built, we're going to be way behind. So that was one of our bigger how might we questions. And our second question drills down to this session specifically, where in elementary, writing is probably the most difficult content area. I would argue it's the most difficult content area in any grade. It's really the pinnacle of learning, in our opinion. If you can think about it, you can talk about it. And if you can talk about it, you can write about it. We like to say a lot here. And so we've been really focused on writing as a district in the last couple of years. And we wanted to specifically see how AI could help students in terms of getting feedback and elevating their writing. But they weren't going to be the users of the AI themselves. So how might we attack that? Again, feel free to just shout out questions if you have them. So here's how we started. We created a course in our district. This was the title, AI Exploration in St. Vrain. And what we did, our teachers seemed to like a bingo board format for whatever reason. We've had some success in the past with courses where we created like tech challenges in a format such as this. And this is a live link. You're free to click on that and see what that looked like. We had over this data is actually a little bit old since I created this slide deck. At this point, we've had over 500 participants in this course for PD credit. We also created some pop-up events. I think we're at event number 7 coming up in the district throughout the year, where we've had over 2,000 participants come to these events. And we've created a really safe, low stakes environment for teachers to come to these events and just explore AI, whether they joined the actual PD course or not. And that has been really exciting. We designated school champions at each school to be an AI leader. And then on the bottom in the green, these are some of the sessions that we've offered people. Prompt writing, just getting started. We've had teenagers in some of our cybersecurity and P-Tech programs be leaders, where people just needing to get started literally from scratch with AI and have students help them. So that has been a really exciting way to introduce AI in our district. And then finally, we get to where we started to prototype. This is, in my opinion, this is the most exciting stage of the design thinking process. This stage is always ongoing, just as learning is ongoing. Prototyping is continuous refinement and reiteration. So here's how we started to do that. Oh, sorry, is this bingo board clickable? Yes. Or are these suggestions like a choice board? So, well, Nancy, the bingo board squares themselves, they are in a Schoology course that we offer. So the bingo board, you may just have it is a screenshot for you, But in our Schoology course, that is something that we built out. Does that answer your question? Hopefully.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, yes, you're welcome. Great. Okay, so as we're prototyping, here are some of, and this is specific to writing, obviously, in elementary classrooms, here are some of the questions that we played around with. What vocabulary can I pre-teach? Especially the visuals. When you are teaching vocabulary in elementary, as you can imagine, if a student doesn't have background knowledge of that word and know what it means at 6 years old, which is often the case, visuals are incredibly helpful. But culling visuals that make sense to a 6-year-old is time consuming. And so AI has been incredibly helpful in generating visuals to match vocabulary words, and that has saved teachers a nice amount of time. Review strategies. And I want to highlight that when we asked AI to generate review strategies, we have gotten a lot better about incorporating in the prompt. Please use Colorado state standards when we do these. As we get more accurate with our prompts, we want to make sure we're using state standards, evidence-based review practices so that we are getting scientifically backed answers from the AI. And then the last one, I really want to highlight as well. Oh, I've got somebody coming in. Strategies for chunking out things based on differentiation. As you can imagine, also in elementary school, but in any grade level, really, smaller chunks for some groups of students are too big, or smaller chunks for some groups of students are too small. And so being able to use AI to really meet the needs of different groups of students based on their skill level has saved a lot of time. Here are some more. I'm going to be really throwing a lot of examples at you, so hopefully this is helpful for you all. Some additional questions. One I really want to highlight is what scaffolds in independent writing will support students after I determine differentiated groups. So the reason I want to particularly highlight this is when we're teaching writing, it is the reason, one of the reasons it's so time consuming is that you often want to conference with individual students or 4 or 5 students after they've written. And of course, while you're doing that, you still have 25 8-year-olds in your room that you need to engage and engage or keep going independently. So one of the ways we've been utilizing AI is creating checklists and templates for students to keep working while we might be conferencing with students in front of us. And that has been incredibly helpful. So again, more examples. Additional prototyping that we've been doing is creating exemplars, like I mentioned, based on rubrics. So always best practice, as we know, to show what the target is, but very difficult to write as a 5-year-old or write as an 8-year-old when you're an adult. So using AI to create an exemplar and as we get better at prompting, please answer this prompt question as a 6-year-old, and based on this rubric, if you have some of the paid versions of AI, you can upload rubrics or you can just copy and paste them. Brainstorming multiple feedback loops, like I mentioned, refers back to that need to replicate yourself instructionally. Paid versions do allow you to upload samples of writing and determine patterns across your classroom. I also want to highlight the AI generated conversations with characters for perspective and point of view. Our data shows that in grades 3 through 12, writing to point of view is one of the most difficult standards for students to master. And we see this in grades 3 through 12. And so utilizing AI to model, say, a conversation with a character from a novel or speak to a historical figure's perspective has been really interesting and helpful for us. In terms of generating lists of sentence starters, word banks, we're seeing a huge increase in the number of language learners, which if we have any, people from the East Coast and California, we're all getting an influx of language learners. So generating sentence starters and word banks is been really helpful as well. And then, as I mentioned on the last slide, creating ways to build independence, self-assessment, goal setting. AI has been fantastic. Okay, so we finally arrive at some examples where we've actually tested. Of course, these are all still being reiterated. I'm going to highlight 3 of them, and these are all links that are live links you're welcome to explore. I'm going to highlight a couple of them and let you explore the rest. So, for example, in first grade, here's a summative writing prompt. Here was the actual prompt from our language arts curriculum. Choices in making decisions, write a short story. This is first grade. I used an AI tool, doesn't matter which one at this point. I think a lot of our teachers are using ChatGPT. That's the one they're the most familiar with, and then it generates an exemplar short story written from the point of view of a potential first grader. You can keep refining that if it seems like it's too advanced, write it as a 5-year-old, or if you need something a little higher for an exemplar, write it at a different age level. So that's one example. I'd like to highlight this one too. This is one of my favorites. Is a way to model productive and appropriate use of AI as a teacher to your class without having the students do it themselves because they're too young, obviously. But when your students type, we use Google everything here. So they've been from grades 3 on, they're really using Google Docs to type their writing. Teacher identifies a pattern in the writing. So in the samples, if they are using a paid version, they could identify 3 or 4 patterns in the writing. If one of the patterns is that transition phrases, transition words are too simple, and they would like to prompt the students to use more sophisticated transition words, for example, or they would like to see more clear topic sentences, they could copy and paste a student sample into an AI tool and then show the group the revised version as a model text, as an example of how the writing could be improved. And then emphasize to their students, okay, what do you notice? Here was our work. Here's the AI's response to this with some more sophisticated transition words or clearer topic sentences. What do you notice? It could have a great discussion about the difference between the 2 samples, and then inspire their students to go back and refine their work. And I just love that's a really simple way to model productive use of AI to your elementary students. Or
Susanna, I just had
yes,
a quick question about
yeah,
this.
absolutely.
I put it in the chat, but
Oh, okay.
when
Oh,
we're
mhm,
uploading student work,
mhm.
are we giving away their intellectual property? And is there an AI that you've found that protects that input?
So I would recommend not we always say be specific and be as specific and anonymous as possible. That's a really good question, Nancy. But we always I would say cut off the name of the student. You know what I mean? If you're uploading samples, like maybe just upload the writing itself
Right.
into the AI, not the student's data. Does that
But
make sense?
even in that, like their
Mm-hmm.
words are their words, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
guess.
just the tricky part that I'm trying to help my teachers with is on the one hand, I really want them to use it to do
Mhm,
exactly what you're saying. On the other hand, even if it's a grade 2 student who wrote up their own
mhm,
story, if I upload their story into chat, for example, which is my very
mhm.
favorite of all of them,
Yes.
and chat has that story and it actually belongs to this little grade 1 person. And
Mhm.
so that's, I guess, the dilemma that I'm wondering about.
And that is a great question. I I think it does in my mind, it feels a little different in elementary versus say a high schooler potentially using it to copy things. Because we're not in this example, we're not using it to then generate, we're using it to identify a trend. Like I mentioned, transition phrases could be stronger. Um, and that's a really good question, Nancy. I don't know if the uploaded picture then becomes part of the data bank. So I would have to actually do some more exploring on that, but I think that's a really good question. So
Okay,
I did,
thanks.
yeah, I didn't really answer that for you.
No, that's okay. It's one of
Yeah,
those big
yeah,
questions that we're
yep,
kind of grappling with at our school division.
yep, and
Because on
absolutely,
one
and
hand,
we're.
it's going to
Mhm,
be messy and we want people to explore
mhm.
it, but on the other hand, it's like, oh, I don't want, yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway, thank you.
you're welcome. And yes, it's all messy, right? I think, like I mentioned before, we wanted to dive in while things were still messy because didn't feel like we could wait. And things might stay messy forever as AI continues to evolve. So I think that's a really, really great question, Nancy. And I'll do some digging on that too. Feel free to get back to me if you find anything. Okay, so the next thing, and yes, thank you, Lottie. We're all here in the beginning stages, right? The last one I want to highlight is this writing checklist, which has been really important for us. And again, we've gotten really good about using Colorado state standards in the prompt itself. So we know we're getting back what we want to get back and not just something random. Create a writing checklist for a narrative. And this could help students really reflect on their own, create goal setting on their own, and assess their own work. And they're very appropriate questions that a third grader could check off on their own. I love this example. So here's what I'm going to do. There's two more examples for you to explore. I'm going to give you, say, 5 minutes or so to check out the other two examples. And then I created a Padlet where if you feel so inclined, you can add to the Padlet after listening to all the examples I've given, exploring some of the links, um, share any takeaways. What can you envision working in your district or classroom on an elementary level? So the Padlet looks like this. Let me know if you need any help adding to that. It should be just this pink plus button on the bottom. And I'll give about 5 minutes for that.
While folks are doing that, can I
Yes,
pose a question to you? Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you. Yes, feel free, because
Okay,
I don't want you
so
to be unsafe while you're driving.
no, I'm on a straight road going to
Okay,
where we're
good.
on a throughway with cruise control, and also I will stop if there's any issue, but there's no cars around.
Okay.
So I work at WIDA, and we do your English language development standards.
Mhm.
Colorado does have a lot of English language learners or multilingual learners in K through 12. So have you? So when you say standards, are you just using like the Colorado Department of Ed content standards in ELA? Is that what you're primarily using?
Yes, yes, but
Okay,
you could put in WIDA standards as well.
so since we have a few minutes and they're looking at the example, if you open a web page, go to standards.wida.us, because we
Hmm.
have digital versions of the standards.
Hmm.
And not to go into too much detail, but I shared about this yesterday, but there's a digital version that you can copy paste from, so you don't have to take it from the PDF. And so it has when you were talking about needing the vocabulary, like if
Hmm.
you click on the language expectation, just the first row, so we do it language expectations by content area or language expectations by key language use, but stay with
Yep.
the first drop down. If you
Hmm.
go in there, drop down the first one and go into ELA. Oops, that's the second one. That's those are, so go one above, one outline. So move your cursor up one, and it says language expectations by content standards and grade level cluster. Click on that link, one link above.
Yep. Oh, right here.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
or grade level cluster.
Yeah. So click on that and then go to ELA, which is standard 2. And then as you open that, then you can go in, choose a grade like 2-3. I think you were working in 2-3. And then from there, so we did an analysis. I really think the Colorado ELA standards are interesting. They have an interesting twist from the Common Core because you all have practices, which are super cool. So we have the language development, like vocabulary and other elements too, such as complexity, transition, cohesive devices, density, organization. So we have, those are the language targets for that grade level cluster for one of 4 key language uses. And they're kind of like text types, but they're more by social purpose.
Yeah,
rather
this
than
is fantastic.
just, and then if you went to the lower, there's proficiency level descriptors. And my question, and I would love to meet with you about this, because I had a teacher in North Carolina, a district person, who was looking to create samples, because we have annotated text samples in our document, but wouldn't that be cool? Right now, we only have them at grade level cluster. And since, multilingual learners are not failed native speakers of English, right? They're learning, so they can be making good progress to be at level 2, but they're technically quote unquote below grade level, but they're really not. They're actually making appropriate progress for their proficiency level, for where they are. So it would be really interesting to take language samples and then break them down by the proficiency level descriptors. And if you click on the expressive mode, for example, because you're talking about writing, click on that and then see that chart on the right, go to the diamond next to the green pin there on the right side of the screen, and go up higher. Yeah, that diamond right next to the green pin in the upper right corner. And then that has all the proficiency level descriptors. And you could copy that in a Word document and then take whatever row you need for your AI. So I would love to talk to you and collaborate with you to figure out a way to take the brilliant things that you're doing right now with kids who might be, speaking English, like that's they're a fluent speaker of English. So anyways, I just wanted to, and I talked yesterday, and there's more to it because you can also get Colorado standards in digital versions at this one place. But
this is all amazing, and I think you are spot on. I think just like we talked about, as AI gets more proficient, it'll be easier and easier to use things like this. But yes, this table is something I actually have up all the time, and so you could, if you didn't have a paid version of anything, you could still utilize this and copy, using say the text that conveys an intended purpose with emerging organizational patterns, right? What would you grade this essay at? Things like that I'm envisioning. Right? Or if we're targeting a level 4 WIDA standard where some frequently used words and phrases with some precision are present, what would an exemplar look like? That's how I envision things like that.
We have in 2 years when the Axis is updated to reflect the standards, because it always takes years to update everything. When the test is updated, we have another chart that's coming out with it. That's just it's with score interpretation, that it's even more plain language and more explicit.
So I would love to chat more about that.
Okay, so if you have your if I can find your email and your PDF or
it's on
or
the
I can
slide.
Perfect. All right, great. I'd love to talk with you more.
Excellent.
Thanks. Yeah, I keep going. This is
Oh,
great.
no, no, reach out anytime for real. Has anyone, yeah, if there's any problems with the Padlet, let me know. You may not be able to get onto that right now, or you can get onto it later, but I thought I would try to make it a little more interactive than just sit and get. So we can continue, but I'm starting to wrap up anyway. Here were our findings that, we can utilize AI as educators without jeopardizing student data. We can model appropriate use for students, whether they are using it yet or not. In the case of young students, they're not using it yet. We can still use it as educators in a meaningful way. And we can integrate AI as a feedback tool to save time without depersonalizing our instruction. So that's what we've been finding so far. We are constantly reiterating, we're constantly refining and testing still. But we have had as a district we've had so much fun diving into AI, and no problem, Nancy. Thank you for joining. We've had so much fun diving into AI. We've learned so much as a district by jumping in, thoughtfully into these waters, of course, always thoughtfully, but not waiting and really playing around and experimenting with AI, even in the younger grades. So here's some information on our school district. This is a live link at the top. It's a really large, I'm originally from New York City, so I'm used to big school districts, but geographically we are huge. We're near Denver, and we pride ourselves on being really innovative in terms of technology use. So please feel free to give feedback on the session and let me know if there are any questions that you have now that you want to chat about. And if you just joined us, I'm sorry if you missed it. But the slides, I do believe the slides were attached or will be attached at some point, and my email is on the very first slide.
Could you show examples of how you generated images by any chance? Like some of the prompts that you did, if there's still time, no other
Yeah,
question.
sure. So with I don't know how long you were in the session, but with this Google Duet AI, that you're welcome, Darren. I have a trial that I'm doing with Google Duet. And so just like when you go to insert an image in a slide deck, I have this option right here, create images with Gemini, and it pops up on the side and it's AI versus, say, searching the web. So that's how I did it for this slide deck. But again, I am piloting this program with Google right now. So that's how I was using it for this particular slide deck. If you are in, say, ChatGPT, and you could have, or Bard. Bard is a little better, I would say, for images. And I would use Bard actually. You can say, please include images for these vocabulary words.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, can you clarify, was what embedded? Is it IO or EO? I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. It like this picture, for example, that you see right here, then is embedded on the slide using Gemini. You're welcome. It's been a really interesting tool to play around with so far. But please feel free to reach out at any point. And I don't have all the answers because we are all still playing around. Thank you, Amy. Thanks for joining. I know some of you may have joined late, so please feel free to ask any questions.
Megan, can you just talk about some of the prompts you use? Because I know this is being recorded, so it'd be really interesting to hear um, just kind of how you thought about prompts with as you're looking, for example, at student work.
Yes, so some of the prompts, for example, I'll go back to this slide actually. Here's a prompt where a teacher gave individual writing feedback. So what they did was copied and pasted. The student's example is here below. I don't know if you can see this, where they had written about Central Park. And so they copied and pasted the student's essay here. And then what the prompt was using this rubric, and we used our ELA curriculum rubric, provide suggestions on how to enhance it. And so what AI spit back was specific examples based on each paragraph of the student's work, which saved considerable amount of time when you have 30 students. Some other prompt examples would be, what are some transition phrases? I'm thinking elementary, of course, second grade, for example. What are some transition phrases besides first, next, and last that my 7-year-old students might be able to start incorporating into their writing? What's a 2-sentence introduction to an essay on animal habitats that I may use as an exemplar for my 3rd grade students? Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is great. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, sure. And you know what? It like prompts, what we talk about all the time is that AI is not meant to be used as a search engine. It is not put in a prompt and one and done, like looking for directions to a restaurant. That is, if people are using it like that, it's often not working for them, right? The AI is only as good as the prompts you are putting in, and it should be treated as a continuous feedback loop. So whatever prompt you put in, if it's not giving you what you want, refine your prompt and keep going until it gives you what you want. So that may take a little bit of time as you get better with prompting, it is faster. So, we always talk about how at first it may not seem like it's saving you time, but as you get more sophisticated and specific in your prompts, it will. And we suggest, just like with anything with students too, if we want to practice something new, practice it out of context. Practice searching for the perfect recipe, that's something not educational at first, before you start using it in an educational way. Get comfortable with it in a non-educational setting that feels less daunting, feel just low stakes, fun. Plan a trip with it. plan a trip to Rome using AI, and then continuously refine that prompt. Okay, now I'm going to Italy, but I'm taking along my 80-year-old mother. What do you suggest? Include links, include pictures. Or now I'm going to Italy, but I'm taking along my 8-year-old son, and continuously play with refining your prompts out of context, and then start to use it in education if it feels daunting at first to just dive into it as far as an educator. So we've been suggesting that a lot, and that's what we've been doing at our events that we have around the district, is letting teachers play with it, just play with it at first, so they feel more comfortable using it. And yes,
Yeah,
I am
like
highlighting Gemini in Slides IO or EO. I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong.
no, that's super. That's really nice. Like I like you have like a felt sense of knowing. So it's like you really get. It's so very multidimensional. Like it feels. It's not. It's. I like. You know. I appreciate what you're sharing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're so excited about it, but we also know how it can be scary for people. Technology is changing so quickly, and some people are like, you know, I'm a tech dork. I will dive in and use it, the newest thing all the time. If I treat everyone like they are the same as me, we're going to turn a lot of people off. And so we've really tried to be empathetic about how some people are slower starters than others in terms of learning and diving in, and that's okay. That's okay.
Well, what a great session. Thank you so much. I realize you're
Oh,
closing in on your time, but thank you so much.
sure. Yeah, reach out anytime.